friends and colleagues,
Oh
Dr.
gosh.
Jenn Lefebre. She drove 2.5 hours to visit me in New York. I am presenting in Long Island, and Jenn came to visit me for us to catch up, and I had to do a Facebook Live because all of you are incredibly jealous, I know, because I'm with Dr. Jenn and you are not. And I'm going to give all my colleagues who've been wanting to hug
Big hugs.
Jenn a hug for all of you.
And I'm giving hugs to Tammy for all of you who miss big hugs with her.
So we're just going to hug during this live.
We'll just hug. Yeah.
So, but I really wanted, while we had this time, to go on and to do a Facebook Live because Jenn just wrote this book and has some other great activities, and I am loving this book. I have been talking about it in my trainings, and I've been using it with my kids. It's called the Fabulous Fight or Flight Stress System. Jenn has been my brain guru for years. When it comes to anything going on in the brain, I am always consulting with Jenn, and Jenn will tell you a little bit more in terms of her background. She may not tell you how brilliant she is, but I can. So Jenn's going to tell us a little bit about this book as well as her products, but let me just tell you that at first when I read this book, because there is a good amount of writing.
There's a ton of writing.
And I have all these little ones, and I'm like, oh, is it going to be too much? And my kiddos, we've been doing it in smaller sections, and they have really been loving it. And a lot of my kids who are even on the autistic spectrum or any of my neurodivergent kids have really been so into the brain and learning about the brain. And when we go through this, and Jenn's going to be talking about it, but there's like different seek and finds, and Jenn's going to talk about what that does to the brain and keeping them engaged in it. And my kiddos have been so cute. I mean, one's like, oh, yes, that's the fight or flight response. Or I didn't know when I get really hyperactive and really silly, that's a fight or flight response. I just thought it was fight or freeze. And I think a lot of clinicians think it's often fight or freeze. But when we see these kids who are literally spiraling, we're not naming it, right? The fight or flight response.
Right, absolutely. And I think just like with that, with the polyvagal theory, and we're thinking about social engagement, and we're learning about these pieces, a lot of times kids are trying to engage and connect, and they're still stressed out, right? So they're trying to, connect with others. They want to be safe. We know ventral vagus is kicked in, and they can end up getting in trouble because they're being the class clowns, or they don't know how to turn it off. And if we think about how they're trying to become safe, they're trying to connect with others, but there's still this overall element of disconnect, it's not going to look the way that we expect it to in the classroom. And so I think one of my goals for this book is that kids know it's their brains trying to keep them safe. When they may be sarcastic or speaking out of turn or wriggling around on the floor, and us as clinicians to know that we have to work with their bodies to be able to help them to be able to regulate.
Right. Jenn, can you just tell some of the people here just a little bit about your background before you talk about the book? Because I think that's really helpful.
Yep, absolutely. So by training, I am a clinical psychologist, registered play therapy supervisor. I also am a 200-hour registered yoga teacher for Yoga Alliance and a registered children's yoga teacher. So my training in Little Flower Yoga, I went through all the certification. I'm a Reiki Master of Masters, which is another type of body work, and a personal trainer as well through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. So I have a lot of body work credentialing in addition to psychology, which is really how I'm trying to incorporate the brain-body connection, but more from the body aspects, not just kind of the brain.
Awesome. Okay, so tell us more in terms of the inspiration of this book, and also I love about the pictures. Can you tell everybody about the photographs that are in here?
So I'm going to show, I'll show my favorite one. So this here, so the artwork, the little figures, and wrong page, I'm backwards on camera, here we go. The little figures here I did purchase from an artist on Etsy, and the background pictures though are photographs that I've taken myself. So this is one of my favorite places. It's in Barkhamsted, Connecticut, the reservoir, and this is not filtered. The colors were that beautiful, but I turned it into a watercolor. So all of the pictures in this book are actually some of my favorite calm places. This is the Daffodil Farms outside of Litchfield, Connecticut. So they're all places that are very special to me that I then did mixed media for.
Wow.
And I purposely wrote the book to say caregiver and child, so any child can relate to the pictures. So a lot of the pictures have varying genders, varying ethnicity, hair color. So there's not one main character that's a little boy or a little girl or a child that's non-binary. It's kind of mixed. So any child can look, and they're not hearing from a parent or a miss or a mister or an aunt or an uncle. The caregiver can be anybody.
Right.
So that can be shifted for any child to feel like this book can be important to me.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit about your message in terms of the hide and seek part of it, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yep, absolutely. So every page, and I purposely, for those of you who have the book, and I know you might not be able to see it, I purposely on any of the photographs wrote the font very light so it wouldn't take away. But in order to be able to integrate both sides of the brain, you're listening, right? So you're more left brain, you're integrating auditory perception, all of these pieces, and then you're being physically active. And then the search and find then adds another layer of executive functioning. So even through just reading the book and then saying, can you see the bunny rabbit scurrying? You're now integrating visual cortex and kind of all of the areas of the brain and repetition. So you're getting several layers of the same material at the same time. And also similar on these pages, the little kind of sticky note is more for the clinician to get some of the deeper information, and the darker font is what you're kind of reading to the kids.
Like with my client, when I did it, and we would read about it, and she would take it in, but I felt like she took even more in after then she was able to do the seek and find and get to know the different animals. So I just love it. There's just really nothing like this. For little kids explaining polyvagal, like we have some things explaining the brain, but even like thinking this idea that we can explain polyvagal to children is, pretty amazing.
Right.
Okay, now show some of these fun things.
Yep, absolutely. So the second piece, so I think actually somebody noted, I think it might have been Jenn Taylor, said that she had liked how the last page said that's a story for another day. And I want to be able to create an activity book that goes along with the story.
Right.
So I'm in the process of doing a couple of things. So one thing is there are kind of little cards that I'm creating that have different prompts. And these are actually going to be within the activity book. So you can be looking through, and then they'll be tying into different pieces, whether it's hyperarousal or hypo or social engagement, attunement, all through co-regulation. And most of it is yoga and pranayama, breathing, but looking at how different breath can activate or calm and really integrating those pieces. And again, having the same pictures and imagery to repeat, but then kids can actually match the strategies that they think will help if they're feeling like a lion in fight response and roar and kind of hyper aroused. They can pick the cards that match that for them and then practice it out. So they can pick one or two strategies. Most of these are going to be under a minute to do. Right. So they could be beginning, end of session, easy things to take home, activities that aren't hard to learn and are really playful.
And you were super generous with these little ones. You guys can see that you had donated some for the
Neuroscience, a play on the beach.
Therapy Summit that I will be at. Shout out to Jackie Flynn and Dora Henderson. But those of you who are going to the summit are going to be able to get this.
Yep, and it's a little squishy lion, that kind of one of the ones that rise and squish.
It's super cool.
And then
like those marshmallow ones.
Yep, I love these. I know, they're just so fun. And the card is going through the 7 spectacular senses. So most of us are familiar with the 5, and like Tammy, you even said you use that in your slides and presenting, where we're looking at things we can see and touch and hear. And this adds in a simple prompt about body awareness and head movement, so engaging the proprioceptive and vestibular system. So this is really good for those kiddos that come in and are hanging off our couch upside down and their heads down, or they're rolling around and spinning. Great for kids that are neurodivergent or kids with trauma. So there's a lot of overlap for what the body and brain does.
Awesome. And you guys can see, look how pretty these are. Tell us about, here's a lion.
Yep. So again, using that repetition. So it's the same imagery. So if a child might not remember the words, they're going to be able to look at the wiggle worm, and that's a tree from Joshua National Park that I took out in California. The chameleon, so if they're feeling that fawn response, you can actually roll this block And then one of the activities that I'll be prompting for is what I call the fight or flight charades. So we could practice putting on our shoes. And if you were putting on your shoes like a possum, right, you'd be in faint response, a little dissociated. So you would just be kind of looking at me.
Right.
Now if you put on your shoes like a wiggle worm, your shoe might be on your head, right? And you're wiggling around and hanging with the, the shoelaces. Like a lion, you might throw your shoes at me. So this is a good way for families to practice different embodied responses. So you could roll the dice, and whatever you get, okay, we're going to pretend to do this with this body response. Teaching kids they can kind of change their body movement. If they normally react like a lion, what would it be like to do it like a deer?
I love that. And I can absolutely see that doing it when we're checking in and whatever had gone on through the week. And, oh, that was a lion response. Tell me, what that lion, more about that lion response. And let's go through all the different responses. If it was the opossum, if it was the wiggly worm and all the different ones for them to like recognize that it really does like keep it right in their body.
Right. Absolutely. And it's even more of a show me.
Yes.
Right. So you can roll it and, okay, show me the wiggle worm in school this week.
Right.
Rather than tell me.
Right.
And they can wiggle around and then say, I got in trouble because I wasn't sitting in my seat and then I kicked over the chair. So it might even open up for more language because they're getting it through in their body, which helps to regulate.
Yeah, and that show me so much more important than tell me.
Exactly.
Right? Which we know.
Yeah. We know so much.
As play therapists and about the brain, that if we ask them to tell us, right? But if they could move and show us, absolutely, and that full body experience is amazing. So how can people find you? Absolutely.
So I am actually in the process of kind of opening up a new website. I'm not quite done with it yet. It's called moonphoenixrising.org. So
I will post that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I do have a Facebook page now for it that is started for it, and I'll have a website. I'll be selling some of this on Etsy. Also, Self-Esteem Shop is going to be carrying some of this as it comes out. So I'm still I'm a perfectionist for any of you who know me. So I'm still revamping it, and I just need to get it out there. Yes. But right now I'm kind of it's not good enough. So it's almost ready. So I was hoping to have the activity book done, but there's some things I'm still tweaking.
Right.
But it should be ready by the end of the month.
Okay, but people for now can get the book on Amazon.
Yep, absolutely. On Amazon, and Self-Esteem Shop is selling the book on Amazon too.
Okay, I'm just checking to see, since this is a Facebook Live, if there's anybody who is...
Oh, hi Neil.
Oh, it's Neil. Book is fun and functional. Name a book.
Okay,
here we go.
Yep. The name of the book, The Fabulous Fight or Flight Stress Response System. And it's Jennifer Lefebre. So if you look at The Fabulous Fight or Flight Stress System, that can be found on Amazon and also on the Self-Esteem Shop as well.
Hi, Rachel.
Oh, it's Rachel too. Hi, Rachel.
Hey, Rachel. Hi,
I'm gonna give you a hug.
one more hug.
One more hug.
Hey,
all these friends.
We wish you guys were all here with us. So we just had to go on. I had to go on and just shout out as we're in the hotel room in Plainsview, New York, randomly that we came together and. Definitely check out the book, though. I'm telling you, I've used it with young ones, and it's been wonderful, and there's so many great ways to do it. So,
and there will be a board book for little sprockets that really takes it down to just one line on a page.
Right.
That if a clinician has read this book, they can do the one line per page, so it's not overwhelming for kids, and then have the knowledge to kind of back it up if there's questions or to go deeper. I hope you found that video helpful with Dr. Jenn, and I will post the Amazon link below, as well as feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Check me out on Facebook at Tammy's Play Therapy and Sand Tray Therapy page, Instagram Tammy Van Hollander, and on my website, mainlineplaytherapy.com. Take care.